What's up, Top 10 fam? Hope you're having an awesome day. I'm your host Ayman Hassan and welcome back to another video. Okay, I think this actually takes the cake as one of my most favorite series that I've done or taken over on the channel. I love mysteries and these videos keep satiating my hunger for new mysteries that I've never heard of, so I'm pretty happy about that. And clearly you guys are too, so let's just jump into it. These are the top 10 creepy unsolved mysteries part 4. Starting us off with number 10 is GELI RAUBAL. I feel like this story was really lost in time and deserves a lot more attention than it got. Now, GELI was Hitler's half-niece and became his housekeeper in 1925. But their relationship was super weird. Despite being related and being 19 years younger than Hitler, they had a weird, possessive, sexual relationship. They spent the next 6 years in this weird relationship and it was clear he had a lot of control over her actions. When he found out she was having an affair with his chauffeur, he forced her to end it and then had her chaperoned at all times. By 1930, she wanted to go to Vienna to continue her singing lessons and marry someone from Linz, but Hitler forbade it. The two had a heated argument in September of 1931 and then he departed for a meeting in Nuremberg. That night, GELI killed herself with Hitler's pistol and he was recalled back to Munich. But it's unclear whether the death was a suicide or a murder, because when her body was found she had a fractured nose and numerous other injuries other than the gunshot. And I mean, if she just shot herself, why would she have all these other injuries? Doesn't really make sense. Police ruled out foul play because, let's face it, Hitler controlled them, but controversy erupted ASAP Rocky about Hitler having murdered her, which is fair enough. But that was also quickly silenced because of the Nazis' political influence and the fact they'll probably kill you if you talk. A journalist investigating her death was arrested before publishing his findings and then executed. Ironically, Hitler actually said she was the only woman he had ever loved. A Vanity Fair article published in 1992 speculated that maybe he accidentally shot her or she was killed on his orders, since apparently she was pregnant with his child and he was not happy about it. So there's definitely motive. Also, can we just, how ridiculous is that? How do you accidentally shoot someone? Okay. Coming in at number 9 is the GREGORY affair, and this family affair has a lot of twists and turns, so I mean, pay attention, people. Back in October of 1984, 4-year-old Gregory Villeman was playing in the front yard of his house in France while his mum did some laundry. 15 minutes pass and the boy is now nowhere to be found, and his uncle receives an anonymous call saying the boy was thrown into the Boulogne River. His body was later found in the river with a hat pulled over his face and his hands and feet bound with rope. Now, let's just quickly hit you with some backstory. During the years before the murder, the Villeman family had been receiving many anonymous calls and letters from a male who wanted revenge against Gregory's dad, Jean-Marie. After his murder, the family got a letter saying, "I have taken vengeance." Now here's where it gets messy. Jean-Marie's cousin Bernard was implicated for the murder based on handwriting experts and was taken into custody. He denied any involvement, but Jean-Marie promised in front of a bunch of press that he would kill Bernard. When he was released, Jean-Marie shot him as he was leaving for work and then was sent to jail for murder. Didn't really think that one through, did you? While that was going on, Gregory's mom was then identified as the one writing all the letters, and then she was charged with a murder and then cleared of the charges 7 years later. This is like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but it's like the Villemans. The case stayed cold till 2000 when DNA testing reopened it and implicated 3 more family members: the great aunt and uncle and another aunt. So at this point, half the family has been implicated in the murder with no conclusion, and no one knows who killed the boy still. Keeping Up with the Villemans. I would watch that. At number 8 we have the JAMISON family. Now this family of 3 suspiciously disappeared on the 8th of October in 2009, but the whole thing was just majorly sus. The family's pickup truck was found a few days into them being missing and it was abandoned. Their malnourished dog was found inside along with their IDs, their phones, their wallets and $32,000 in cash. But apparently that was all good because the family was known to carry huge amounts of cash with them, which again, I don't know why anyone didn't question that. That is weird. Many theories came out about the case that perhaps the family had faked their own deaths and were now in the witness protection program. This came up because the father, Bobby, was in a lawsuit against his dad, Bob, because he'd apparently threatened Bobby and hit him with a car. Others say the family was involved in drug dealing because of all the cash that they always had, and that perhaps they were drug addicts that had just lost the plot. On the other hand, the couple had visited their pastor on multiple occasions, telling him they had seen spirits and apparitions inside their home, so maybe they were possessed possessed? I don't know. Others even think it was a group suicide, like there's just a lot going on and I don't know who to believe. The remains were found 4 years later and were correctly identified as the 3 family members. Still no idea what the hell happened though. Filling our number 7 slot is the ghost blimp. Now back in the summer of 1942, the locals of San Francisco saw something bizarre in the sky. They witnessed a sagging broken blimp falling to earth. On its way down, it stopped on a rooftop and then took down a bunch of power lines and damaged the nearby area quite a bit. After watching it fall for what seemed like ages, when it finally landed, locals ran to help the crew inside, only to find out that no one was manning the blimp. Everything inside looked normal-ish. The engine had been smashed on impact, the propellers were bent, and gas was leaking into the street, but the lifeboats and parachutes hadn't been used, so where the hell was the crew? The blimp had left the naval station that morning with Lieutenant Ernest Cody and Ensign Charles Adams on board, yet the duo were never seen again. The Navy were adamant the men wouldn't leave the blimp voluntarily, so they theorized that perhaps the gondola door malfunctioned and one of them fell out and the other tried to steer the ship down to the water to save him and then fell out as well. Seems like a very unlikely story, but sure, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Not. Now at number 6 is Walter Collins. Now back in the late 1920s, Christina Ida Collins made headlines after her 9-year-old son Walter went missing. He went to the cinema one day and never came home, and his disappearance was huge in LA. Hundreds and hundreds of leads came in that the police followed up, but to no avail until 5 months later when they found a boy in Illinois claiming to be Walter. Christine was shown a bunch of photos and letters from Walter before bringing him home, but upon his arrival in LA, Christine claimed that the boy wasn't her son. And you are not the mother, and he is not your son. The officer told her to take him home and see and try him out, but she came back 3 weeks later saying it wasn't her son and she had dental records to back up her claim. The police thought she was just trying to embarrass them and accused her of being a bad mother, so much so that they got her committed to a psych ward for being difficult or an inconvenience. After screwing her the hell over, the officer in charge interviewed Walter, who admitted he was actually 12-year-old Arthur Hutchins Jr., a runaway boy. He was hoping posing as Walter would allow him to go to LA to meet his favorite actor. That's just not really how it works, Arthur. Christine was released 10 days after his confessions, and Gordon Stewart Northcutt, the man guilty for the Wineville chicken coop murders, was suspected as Walter's murderer. And that was because Gordon's mum said she helped her son kill Walter, but he was never brought to trial for Walter's murder, and Christine still believed he was alive somewhere and looked for him till the day she died. Till this day, we don't know whether Gordon killed him, whether he got abducted by somebody else, whether he just ran away, we just don't know. And also, drinking game, how many times did I say Walter in that bloody paragraph? Walter, 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 like shut up, Eamon. Coming in at number 5 is Jodine Serrin. Now Jodine was a 39-year-old woman that had been diagnosed with schizophrenia along with multiple other mental disabilities. She was still a very high-functioning individual and she lived alone in an apartment in Carlsbad. Her parents went to check up on her on Valentine's Day back in 2007, and they walked in on what they thought was a funnily awkward scene. They caught Jodine in bed having sex with who they assumed was a boyfriend. I don't know, maybe you just want to sleep around, maybe it's not a boyfriend. We don't shame Jodine. Either way, the parents told them to get dressed, assuming an embarrassed couple would soon come out of the room, but they were quite wrong. After waiting quite a while, they checked in on them again and realized the man had escaped without being detected and that Jodine had been strangled to death. She had been beaten and had been dead for at least a day or more before they actually found her. Forensic evidence a decade later confirmed the man in the room that day was not her killer. Autopsy results pointed to blunt force trauma to the head as the cause of death. The case stayed cold for a very long time, but in 2018, David Mabrito was identified through DNA and genetic ancestry as being a possible suspect for her murder. But he committed suicide in 2011, so I guess we'll just never know. At number 4 is the Phantom Barber. Now let me set the scene. Location, Pascagoula, Mississippi. Time, summer of 1942. A contained fear took over the locals of the small coastal town as someone broke into people's homes at night by slitting their window screens. He would go into women's bedrooms and cut off locks of their hair, but that's it. He wouldn't kill them, no one would get hurt, but quite a few women reported the incident. The first 2 incidents were innocent, but the third got violent. The Phantom Barber attacked a sleeping sleeping couple by assaulting them with a crowbar, breaking the woman's teeth, and knocking the husband completely out. Both survived but could not for the life of them identify the assailant. In the fourth incident, he seemed to have chloroformed his victim and taken her hair, but again, that's it. Retired chemist William Dolan was charged with the attacks when a bundle of hair was found behind his residence. A few years later, he was released after passing a lie detector test, so no one quite knows who this person was. Some still believe it was William behind the incident, some people think it's someone else completely, whereas others just have no clue whatsoever. Which camp do you fall under? Let me know. Filling our number 3 slot is Lars Mittink. Now this one really got me because I simply just don't understand what happened here. So back in July of 2014, Lars went to Golden Sands in Bulgaria with a bunch of friends. Party it up, dude, yeah. And basically a bunch of young people go there for a good time. It's like going to Mallorca or Ibiza. Either way, a few days into the trip, Lars got into a fight with 4 random guys over football because God forbid anyone disrespect a guy's football team. He ended up coming out of the situation with a ruptured eardrum, and doctors told him he wasn't fit to fly home with his friends. Despite his friends offering to stay with him, Lars insisted he'd be fine alone, and they left on their way. He checked into a cheap hotel in Bulgaria, but the day after his friends left, he started acting very weird. He was erratic, he was paranoid, and he texted his mum saying he felt unsafe, to cancel his credit card, and that he was hiding from 4 men that were apparently following him. And I hope to God it wasn't the same 4 men from the fight before, because I mean, insulting Bayern Munich, it's not that deep, it's really not. Either way, the CCTV footage captured Lars' last moments where he was seen inside Varna airport with his bags. A while later, he can be seen running straight out of the airport without his bags, and then outside the airport he runs to a fence, climbs it, runs into the woods, and has literally never been seen since. Where are you at? No. Now at number 2 are the Devil's Footprints. Now back in February of 1855 in Dover, England, residents of a town woke up to find hoof-like footprints around their homes. The prints were 4 inches long and 3 inches wide and covered 40 to 100 miles of track, which is quite substantial. But the weird thing about it was that the marks were in a single file line, and no 4-legged animal could have produced prints like that. So locals truly believe the devil had come to Dover, because that's clearly the first thing you should think of. The prints just went straight over obstacles like rivers and houses and haystacks, and were even on top of people's houses on their roofs. Some people literally had these prints walking straight up to their front door, and back in the day, all hell freaking broke loose and people were hoping to God it wasn't Satan. They were pointing to hopping mice, or a kangaroo, or badgers, or an experimental balloon. Kangaroos in Dover, England, really. Basically, they were clutching at straws, and no one's figured out what the hell happened since then, so we're just gonna keep it at that. It was a kangaroo, or an experimental balloon. Alright, and I thought I talked a lot of shit. And finally, at number 1 are the lead-masked men. Back in August of 1966, 2 corpses were found on Vintum Hill in Rio de Janeiro. The bodies were wearing suits, waterproof coats, and had lead masks over their eyes. Now with their bodies, authorities found towels, water bottles, and a notebook with the instructions 1630 be at agreed place, 1830 swallow capsules, after effect protect metals, wait for mask signal. The men were identified as Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana. The families told authorities they said they were going out to get work supplies, but instead boarded a bus and headed towards Niterói. The 2 stopped at a bar in town where the waitress claimed Miguel seemed especially nervous and was constantly checking his watch. Now no one knows what was in those capsules that both men swallowed, and the toxicology report was inconclusive. The lead masks also made no sense. Like, if they were protecting the men from radiation, fine, but what radiation? Bish aware. 50 years later, we still don't know what the hell that was, and I guess we never will. That's why it's number 1 on this list. And that's it for today's video, guys. I honestly love this series. I hope you guys do too. Let me know which ones you guys had heard of before, which ones you hadn't, and what your theories might be on what the hell happened in these cases. As always, I'm your host Ayman Hassan, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!